What about the mashed potato story?
Do it again.
Don't do it like that. Be natural.
Go ahead.
What about the mashed potato story?
Well, there's been a lot of funny things that has happened over the years, but this isn't probably the funniest, but it is the most unique maybe. Was back when I was 15 years old and probably too young to work, but in the eyes of my parents I wasn't. An opportunity came up for me to work at a convent, Divine Providence Convent, and there was a job opening because Debbie, my cousin, was graduating from high school and quitting that job, so that job became available. The problem was I was only 15 years old and you weren't allowed to work until you were 16. But my parents kind of got around the plan a little bit. So they pulled out my birth certificate and they said, let's change that year to from 1968 to 1967. So that would make it look like I was 16. So they were, and I can remember sitting in the sun parlor trying to match paper color with the birth certificate. And finally, my dad pulls out an envelope and matched it up with the birth certificate, and that looks pretty good. Okay, and they're cutting it apart and trying to match the handwriting, and voila, there you go. I went in for the interview with Sister Janet and got the job. And for about a year, he had to drive me to work because I was too young to be able to drive. So, there you have it.
When I was little, I always wanted to sleep in curlers, and one time a couple of times, she set my hair in perm rods, and I slept in perm rods, which killed my head. And I woke up and she took them out and my hair was very, very curly. And I looked more like Tim when he was little. And I said, Kizzy doesn't even know who I am. And Dewey said, no, it looks cute.
And she also had a great sense of humor about everything, in particular herself. I can remember she got a perm one time, and we said after she got the perm that she looked like Gene Wilder, and she did, and she just thought that was funny. You know, we would always laugh about how we started calling her Gene, as a matter of fact. But she had a very, self-deprecating, funny sense of humor about herself.
The difference between them as parents and them as grandparents, really not much.
The grandchildren are allowed to have a lot more candy and junk than we were allowed to have.
Go.
Sleeping over at Dewey and Pappy's house is really fun. We eat a lot of popcorn and ice cream. We go to bed at like 10:30-ish. And we have a lot of fun. We usually go someplace, like the girls go somewhere and the boys go somewhere, and then we meet back up at the house and go to sleep. Charlie?
It's like kind of what Max said.
Dewey always is willing to get us like an ice cream cone, or she always gets us DQ whenever we're with her and we have a sleepover. And Pappy, he always takes us to the lake, and he always takes us to the pond to go frog catching and turtle catching and fish catching at Deep Creek.
They have given me guidance throughout my whole life, and they are continuing to give me guidance.
One funny thing about Pappy is that he watches SpongeBob and he has a Patrick shirt, and also he wears a Minion shirt to bed.
They seem to worry more about the grandkids than they worried about us.
And it's the same with the kids. If they're doing something great, they'll let them know, and if they're not doing something great, they'll also let them know. And I feel like that's what helps the kids be close to them.
I think my mom is more like Dewey because she's strict about spending money. Like if I want a cool pair of shoes, Mom would be like, no, they're too expensive, you're gonna grow out of them. And Dewey won't. She, like, if we want to get something, she'll just say, go to the dollar store.
I think Mommy is more like Dewey because they both hate the shows that we watch and they both say they're annoying. But Pappy, on the other hand, loves our shows and thinks they are awesome.
I think my mom's more like Pappy because she's like funny and Pappy's funny. I think Mommy's more like Dewey because they both love to clean and make us clean.
And willing to do something that our mom and dads don't want us to be getting, and they get us the things that we want to get.
Okay.
Marianne, I don't know if you remember or not, but way back when I first started dating Priscilla, I still remember coming into your house at 149 Montana, and I was waiting for Priscilla to come down the steps, and you apparently were out in the kitchen with one or two of your girlfriends, and I still remember you three walking in, and when you first saw me, you did sort of a double take, like, I don't know whether you thought I'm ugly or maybe I'm not too bad or whatever, but I still remember you three walking in and taking a look at me and then, oh, hi, how are you? And then introducing yourself. But I remember that was the very first time I met you.
Our differences, and I recall that at the time our older cousin was living for us and renting rooms. He had a job, and we would have fights all the time, and he got tired of us having fights all the time, so he bought some boxing gloves, and he used to referee boxing matches in the cellar where Tom and I used to box. And after that, we didn't, we always got along, and that was a short period of time whenever we had our boxing matches. But most of the time after he got older, he was with Marianne all the time, and I didn't see her, or Mert, so I didn't see him very much.
Okay, and the only other thing I want to say is I still remember I would summer vacation down at the Stadany house on Bonneview Street where Tom and his family lived, and I do seem to recall way back when again that these three little kids had come riding down Bonneview on their brand new bicycles. The three Moul boys. I seem to remember that.
Being the youngest, I always got teased by both Tom and Larry. Once we got through that stage, everything was great.
He told me, he said, Ricky told me he was crushed when he knew your dad was going with your dad. No, Mir was going with your dad. He said, I was so hurt because he liked her so much, He said, I couldn't believe it. I said, really? He said, yeah. He said, he said, boy, could she hit that ball. She could hit him a mile. And the boys next door, the Gartner boys played, and Tom, the youngest one, he wasn't good at playing softball at all. So they wouldn't pick him for their team. They put your Marianne instead. And Tom's mother said to Bob, his older brother, why don't they pick you? And I think Bob said because he isn't any good. Marianne's better than him.
Some of the things, I remember from growing up with Tom is down there on Bonneview Street, we had a gang of kids on the street, and we played different things in the street. And I used to always play along with them, and some of them may have been 6 years older than me and would be playing football out in the street. And, I'd always be, involved in everything with them. And like I said a lot of the things I said, I think it was at Tom's 60th birthday party, how, we used to hang around together, a lot of us and, the friends. And, I was always welcome to go along with Tom, and they were my friends too. But we used to do a lot of crazy things together. I mean, like I said, we walked up the incline, one of the inclines over there on the south side. We walked up the incline to Mount Washington, and I remember riding our bikes and riding them on Baum Boulevard. It was. We're riding our bikes and cars are whizzing by us, and there we are that far away from home on our bikes, and we used to go everywhere like that. And he watched over me, And another thing I remember, which I was just talking to him about, was when we went swimming up at the strip mines up in Zelienople. I think I was a little off the way from them, and I went in and I cut my foot. I didn't know I cut my foot, it just hurt, and I got out and looked at it. And there was a gash in my foot about 1.5 inches deep. And I just started screaming. And everybody ran over to see what was wrong, and the blood was coming out of my foot, and we wrapped it in a towel. And of course I couldn't walk. So they had to carry me piggyback back to the car, which, I don't know, might have been at least a 1/4 mile away. And Tom and somebody else we used to hang out named Jerry carried me to the doctor's office, and the doctor stitched me up, and we didn't have enough money to pay him, so the doctor said that's okay. So that's one of the big things I remember about him. And I just remember I did go to all the high school football games when he was playing high school football. I didn't get to see him much in college, but I did get up to a couple of games, when I go up with Grandma Delaney, and it was just great, Both him and Larry were great brothers, and are great brothers, and I just love them both.
But we had and when we were little, we used to play baby dolls together, and we'd dress up the baby doll and put her in a buggy and take a walk, and we'd walk all the way up Montana. And this one lady, her name was Mrs. Springs. She lives on Montana. She was out, and she said to me, she said, "How old are you? Don't you think you're a little bit too big to still be playing with baby dolls?" And I didn't know what to say. I said no. So we went all the way up to the top of the street, and then we come down, and I told my mom, and Mom said, why doesn't she mind her own business? She had no right saying that to you. Well, then I didn't want to do it anymore, because I thought, well, maybe I am too old. And your mayor said, "Oh, come on," and Mom said, "Don't pay attention to her. You go. She has no right saying that to you. That was ignorant. The next time, tell her that's none of your business." Well, I don't know. I don't think she did it again, but I don't know whether I would have had the nerve to say that's none of your business. And then we had a dog, and we used to dress him up in the winter. We'd put a hat on him and a sweater and put him in the buggy and take him for a walk too. And one of the neighbors were out in the street. Oh, let me see your baby doll. Oh my gosh, it's a dog. They couldn't believe it, and how he stayed in the buggy. He never even
Rusty.
tried to, yeah. He never even tried to get out. He liked it.
No surprise that the Mouls are together after all these years. Wonderful marriage, wonderful family, and when I look back, I can't imagine the two of them ever. Everything was easy. Their relationship was always, the word I will use is easy. You didn't make a big deal out of making plans and going and being with the crowd, and their success in marriage, I think, is just soulmates. Caring about each other, putting each other first.
That's great.
What do I think it would be like to be married for 50 years? A lot of fun. They're having fun. They're golfing all the time. They can go to the movies whenever they want to. They can, and you know, the fact that they are healthy and are able to do all that stuff is awesome. And I hope that if, you know, and when we get to 50 years, we're able to do that too.
We'll go get our early bird specials.
No, we won't. We will never eat at 4 o'clock.
You guys probably know as well as us what it takes to have a successful marriage for this number of years. My best friend here, we obviously get along pretty well, and whenever there are any disagreements, she usually manages to soothe them over, and she has much more patience than I do, and I think all in all we've been able to make it work pretty well. What say you?
Okay, is it me now?
Yeah.
Yes, we have had a good life together, but there has been some times that what weren't so good. But we got through them the best we could, and I think the way to keep together is to, if one says something nasty, instead of saying something nasty back, say something nice if you can. Sometimes it's pretty hard to do, but it really helps. Or else just go into another room and do something else until that person settles down. I find that that is the best solution to getting along well. And compliment each other. If they do something nice, say, oh boy, thanks. I really enjoy that. That's important too, I feel. And don't be criticizing one another.
That's perfect. All right.